What's up, everybody? This is Moose and Brian here to talk about the RBC Heritage, some PGA DFS picks, and lineup strategy advice for FanDuel and DraftKings. Again, here to talk about the RBC Heritage. I'm Moose. You're Brian. So, Brian, let's jump right into this. How do you want to talk? You want to talk about some line moves? I know we just Nirmata, our $100,000 PGA winner, writes the article. Just did their Wednesday update. Should we jump into that?
Yeah, let's jump right into it. So the RBC Heritage, it's a stark contrast from what we saw in the Masters last week. Star-studded field, lots of big names having a chance to win. Whereas this week, and this is kind of reflected in the line move section, that it's wide open. Anybody can win this event. And normally, like last week in the Masters, so Nirmata, our PGA DFS writer, he tracks line moves at Pinnacle Sports every week. These moves are very predictive for golfer success. And last week there were a handful for the Masters. But this week, Pinnacle is still pricing up every single golfer in the odds to win field. So all 150 golfers, or however the hell many people there are. But legit, like 20 dudes got moves this week, plus another 3 that he just posted in our Discord channel. And it's not your common names. I mean, we have Dustin Johnson in this field. We have Patrick Cantlay in this field. We have Webb Simpson in this field. We have Colin Morikawa in this field. Those guys weren't even included moves in these line moves. And if you haven't been grinding PGA DFS with us for the past few months, you probably wouldn't recognize many, if any, of these names.
Exactly, yeah. So as you see here on your screen, this is the daily plug that you can check out at occupyfantasy.com. I'm going to scroll down in here a bit. And, with the Wednesday update on the Pinnacle Steam moves, just someone like Austin Cook at 29% move. Not many people might know of him. There's a bunch of names in here that if you're not grinding PGA, you probably wouldn't know who they are.
No, and just in music to my ears, right? Tournament player. Some of these guys are like, you wouldn't expect them to have odds to win moves. Austin Cook is $6,100 on DraftKings, $100 more above the minimum, and he's projected for 0.3% ownership. Yet he has a 29% move. Similar moves for guys like Ben Martin, Scott Piercy, KH Lee, Bryce Garnett. Like, all these dudes are like 1% owned plays, super cheap to help you fit in top price players. And for a 150 maxer like me, I'm leaving all kinds of crazy salary on the table this week, because anybody can win this event. It's not like last year, and Moose, actually, Nirmata just posted this quote in our Discord channel right before we went live. Nero is dialed into the golf scene. Mm-hmm. And he reads all the player quotes, the press conferences, and Webb Simpson, who is one of the highest priced golfers this week, they talked to him after his round today, his practice round, and he said that, if you guys watched this event last year, this year is not going to be like that. Last year, it was pushed back to June because of the restart with COVID, mm-hmm. and the course played a lot easier. But he said everybody's around here talking, the fact that we're playing this in April like we normally do, it's a little bit windy. The course is playing fast and firm. You're not going to see someone win it 20 under. It's going to be much closer to 10 under than it will be 20 under. And the game, as Nirmata points out in the plug, you can't just overpower this course. Anybody with iron accuracy and short game prowess can win this event, which is why, and a lot of times when Nirmata points that type of course structure out and the course fit and the course metrics, a lot of times the Pinnacle moves reflect that moves. And all these guys on this list, as he talked about after the Wednesday update, these are all guys that fit that T, right? These aren't like bombers. These aren't the most talented guys in the field, but they have good short games, and in a windy coastal course, it really is an interesting week.
Oh, I have to sneeze. Or I thought I did. I hate those fake sneezes. Yeah, and I actually do have to sneeze. Thank you.
Bless you.
Thank you. But yeah, so just really quick, I know we talked about a lot there in those last couple minutes. I just want to break some things down. So, for you, Brian, who's a 150 maxer, you're absolutely getting wild in this event, playing people like KH Lee, Cook, all these people that have these crazy Pinnacle line moves that are less than 1% projected ownership. How should a non-pro, let's say a non-50 maxer, let's say they're doing a single entry 3 max, maybe they're making a couple lineups for satellites. How do you toss in? Because there's so many of these. As I scroll down, there's a handful of these people here that are on these Pinnacle Steam Move lists. How do you tie those in without getting too fancy for your contest type?
Yeah, so for single entries, a limited number of entries, low risk contests, I'm looking to find golfers that are not only just on this list. This is a good starting point, but then Niramata wrote them up in the plug later as his favorite plays of the week, his personal rankings. Our Occupy model likes them. They fit our projected ownership lineup structure, or and really that's what we call our trifecta. They get a line move, the model likes them, Niramata likes them. And there are a couple of guys this week that stick out to me from that standpoint. Harris English, he didn't get the line move, but both Niramata and the plug like him. I think probably the closest one you'll see is probably Matthew Neesmith. Niramata wrote him up in the others he likes this week. Neesmith's top 25 in our model, got the line move. He's probably the closest to our trifecta play that there is. And then I think I'm just looking here one more time. Brandon Grace is the other one. Brandon Grace and Kevin Streelman are the three guys that really fit the trifecta. These aren't your everyday golfers that we're dying to play, right?
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, even though some of those names, I know all of them, but still some of them can be a little bit under the radar. But yeah, I totally understand what you mean, and that kind of ties in. I do want to tie in our Occupy model. You've mentioned that before. As I scroll down here on the plug, what Niramata wrote up is the course info and then some of the key stats here. Some key stats that we're looking for: greens and regulation, ball striking, birdies made, approach, around the green, scrambling, and our custom Occupy analysis built into the Occupy model called putting variance, custom Occupy fantasy metric. It's tough, especially with these no-name golfers, to get a handle on. I guess from an outside perspective, how to one, narrow what goes well at a course, and two, get that for hundreds of players. And so our model does that, finds all the stats that you need to for a specific course, and ranks all of those golfers in a model. So definitely go ahead and check that out, occupyfantasy.com. And there's always a couple golfers that stand out, and you're like, who is this person? Two, why do they stand out? And they usually end up doing very well.
Exactly. And I mean, so just a couple guys that rank high in the model and get the line move. Brandon Grace, who we talked about. Matthew Neesmith, who we've talked about. Sergio Garcia, we've talked about. Streelman, we've talked about. Russell Henley gets a line move as well. And I think those are the only ones. Yeah, I think that's it. So, I mean, so the top 10 in the model are definitely names we recognize. Webb Simpson, Patrick Cantlay, Siwoo Kim, Berger, Sergio, Dustin Johnson, Harris English, Hatton, Zalatoris, Morikawa, Connors, I guess, right? So like those are the guys people know. And then after that, it's a crapshoot. So I was actually talking to a Discord member today named Cadillac. He's building 10 lineups, and similar to what Niramata talked on our podcast a couple weeks ago about minimizing the number of things you need to get right. PGA DFS is one of those things where you have to take a stand somewhere. There's 150 freaking golfers.
Yeah.
And you're playing 10 lineups. You're playing one lineup. So I told him, I said, because the way we break it down at Occupy, you want to get two golfers that are 15% or higher owned in your high risk lineups, two golfers that are 5% or owned or less, and then two guys in the middle there. So if I was making a handful of lineups, 10 lineups or less, I would pick one of those blocks, whether it's the high owned, the low owned, or the medium owned, and just pick two or three guys and build around those and hope that those are the two guys that go off. For me, Moose, I think the easiest way to do that this week is because we get so many randos in the line moves. I would pick two of the studs that I like, whether it's Simpson and Cantlay or, Morikawa and DJ, whoever it is. I would pick the two studs I think have the best chances of finishing high here, and then mix and match those mid and low owned guys around them, just because we do have so many options to pick from.
Yeah, and that kind of ties into the questions that we have here. You got a bunch of questions here. One from E, talk about stars or scrubs, or more of a balanced build for the large GPPs. Sounds like more. It could be either way, honestly, right?
You really could go either way, because for me, none of the studs truly stand out, right? If Simpson obviously ranks highly, Cantlay ranks high, DJ, but like nothing else is that great for them. the no line moves. Nero didn't write him up. They're not getting much action in the betting markets. I guess Morikawa slightly, but the thing is, like, we have all these cheap guys to pair with them. So if you like a couple of the studs, play some Austin Cooks and Garnetts and Piercy's and Stuart Sinks, like all these cheap guys, pair them up, because very rarely can you get 2-3 studs in your lineup and feel good about it. This is a week where you can. Or because we don't think a stud has a high advantage this week, we can go super balanced and get all these higher owned medium priced guys that have line moves or rank high in the model, and get a bunch of guys in that 7 to 8K range. I think that's probably the best move, just because I do think it'll be a wide open event that we won't necessarily see a stud in the top 5.
Yeah, and so leading into Timothy's question, what are you doing with the 10K guys, Brian, this week? It sounds to me like you're having less ownership than what the field is going to do for them.
Yeah, definitely. So DJ, if you look at our projected ownership for the 10K guys, DJ and Cantlay are under 15%. Webb Simpson checks in at the highest at 21%. And then Morikawa 18%. And then Cameron Smith is priced at 10.2 for whatever reason. He's 6% owned. And then Berger 16% owned. And Zalatoris right behind them. Yeah, I don't have a ton. I got 15% of the studs, a little less of Berger and Smith. And I'm really playing more balance. And even so, I'm leaving salary on the table, which is something I rarely do. I never leave really over $1,000 more. But with all these line moves telling us that anybody can win this event, I don't feel the need to jam in studs and use up all my salary. As long as my exposures are right, like, it wouldn't surprise me to see a 7, 8, 9K golfer win this event.
Exactly, yeah. And another question here from Brandon B. That, I'll be honest, I've never even thought about doing something like this. Is there any advantage of stacking Thursday morning, Friday afternoon, and classic slates?
Yeah, I don't think the edge is that great. The edge is definitely there. But here's the thing, right? Like, forecasts can change all the time, especially on the coast. As of right now, the wind is less for Thursday morning, Friday afternoon golfers, specifically Friday. The Friday morning is a little windier than Friday afternoon. If nothing changes, that's a great approach. However, if it rains, which it could, and pushes things back, now all of a sudden the wind forecast changes completely. I think I would use it as a tiebreaker moose, but I wouldn't necessarily go out and stack unless there was a much greater distinction between the tee times. And here there's a little bit, but it could change. Weather's fickle. It's not a lock and load situation.
Yeah, it makes sense to me. Good questions to everybody. And for those who are just joining, you don't know who we are. I'm Moose, one of the co-founders, data guru here at Occupy Fantasy. Brian, you're the CEO, co-founder of Occupy Fantasy. We're from OccupyFantasy.com, at Occupy Fantasy on all the social media apps. I'm at CFB_Moose, and Brian is at Brian Jester FF. We're here talking about PGA DFS picks for FanDuel and DraftKings for the RBC Heritage. What you see on screen here is the Daily Plug, written by our PGA DFS writer Nero Mata, top 75 PGA DFS player and recent 100K winner. I'll just say this, Brian. After for people watching, after you watch this video and live stream, go back and listen to the most recent podcast Brian did with Nero Mata. I'm jealous, y'all. The podcast that you two do is just so evergreen. You can listen to it 5 years from now and apply it to not just DFS but to life. It's absolutely a fantastic resource.
I know. We need Nero Mata just to win more events so we can get him on the show more often. He's got such a busy schedule outside of his DFS hobby and writing for us that, I mean, to me, it'd be fantastic, because him and I kicked around the idea of having a weekly podcast just talking about high-level stuff. And I think that would everyone would get the most enjoyment out of that. But he's a super busy dude. Now we just need him to win 100K every week, so we have a reason to bring him on.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. And so what do you want to go through next? I was thinking about maybe we could bring up the model and look at some of the guys in there.
Yeah, I was thinking we could look at the ownership buckets and just see who fits in that high-owned, medium-owned, and low-owned. And while you bring that up, one of the most, at least the section I love reading of the Daily Plug for PGA, is the lineup strategy section, where Nero Mata looks at the event from last year or years past and gauges what the proper approach is. And unsurprisingly, the winning GPP lineup last year had 2 high-owned guys, 2 medium guys. I think just 1 low-owned guy last year. But it follows that strategy all the time, where we have all week to figure out who the best plays are. but it's still golf. So we want to get two of the good plays in our lineups, two way under the radar sub 5% plays, and then two medium golfers. And that's where we want to get our leverage in that medium range. And fortunately, there's a lot of guys this week.
Yeah, and even though it is a weekly event, not everyone's going to know who these I don't want to say scrubs, but like these less than 5% owned guys that have the chance to do well because one of their skills might fit that course very well. Now a lot of people know about it, so that's why you want to keep those ownership buckets in your lineups.
I mean, we say it every week, Moose, right? If we're trying to find reasons to play low-owned golfers, right? Just one reason is enough to find. And if there's a 30% move at Pinnacle on a 1% golfer, that's your reason. Like that's a good enough reason. So, yeah, I think that if you're trying to find a reason this week, there are plenty of reasons out there to play low-owned golfers.
Absolutely, yeah. Cool. So as we bring it up here, the one that I always kind of have the most trouble with is that DraftKings bracket, that 5 to 15% range. So I'm going to use our sliders here, and I'm going to do 5 to 15% range. Because if you scroll, look, you get like 34 golfers or so, really just a handful. So kind of take me through, what would your process be if we're trying to label out some guys that are in this 5 to 15% range that we'd want to put in our lineups?
Yeah, so this is truly where you get leverage. And if you look at the best PGA DFS players, a vast majority of them, this is where they get their leverage. We've talked about it in NBA DFS before. It's the same in PGA DFS. Sure, you can go heavy on a high-owned golfer, but the benefit just isn't as great if they do well because so many people have them in your contest. Getting huge leverage on sub 5% golfers is incredibly risky. I've done it in a couple weeks. I've done it in majors, but for the most time, it's probably unnecessary risk, even for someone like me who takes on the most risk. This middle range, 5 to 15%, is where you want to get leverage on the field. And for me, this week, there's a couple guys that really fit because their line moves, or Nero has talked about them, or whatever there may be. So just rattling off some names here: Russell Henley, Kevin Streelman, Harris English, all hit multiple, either great in the model line moves, or Nero wrote them up in the plug. Lucas Glover got a line move. Sergio Garcia ticks a couple boxes. Matt Kucher, the cover boy of the daily plug. Matthew Neesmith, the trifecta play. I think Patton Kazir, who Nero wrote up. And then there's a couple more even further down the list in that 5 to 6% range. But those first guys, I think Henley, Streelman, English, are probably the trio you should be looking at the most for your leverage.
Yeah, I'm just looking here in the model. Harris is 8,400 on DraftKings, so he does offer you a little bit of savings. And with only 10% projected ownership, that's someone you can fit in your lineup to save a little bit of salary if you do decide to play some of the more expensive golfers. Timothy has a question here. Brian, who do you have winning this tournament this week?
This, if you're a betting man, this is the type of week to just, take a unit and spread it out amongst 10 golfers. 10th of a unit on this guy, 10th of a unit on this guy. And just have some sweats over the weekend. For me, if I had to pick one golfer, I would probably bet Harris English at 33 to 1. He's the guy that when Nero identifies him, he does pretty well for whatever reason. Nero's locked into Harris English's game, and he wrote him up this week, or at least had him in the players he likes this week. So I think English is the guy for me. Just 8,400 DraftKings. Again, like I said, 33 to 1 at Play Sugar House. He would be the guy I pick, and he's a guy that I have, 25-30% exposure to. One of my highest exposures in my 150 max this week.
Wow, that's crazy. Yeah, Harris English is definitely a good play. I like him at 33 to 1. I'm sure if you shop around, you might be able to get a little bit more out there, but I still think that's a good bet there. Brian, let me ask you this then. We'll switch back over to the plug, and I do just want to point out, I actually had a couple people ask me this Pinnacle misprice list. If you could just take a couple of minutes and explain what this is and how we can use it to our advantage.
Yeah, absolutely. So, we've talked about it many times on this show before. DFS salaries are stagnant. They don't move after they're released, just for good reason, right? It'd be too complicated to play DFS.
That would be fun.
That would be like, the earlier you play them, the better price you get on a player. That would be wild.
Yeah.
But that's not the case. They're stagnant. And as a result, we get all this information that changes things throughout the week, especially in weekly sports. right? Backup running backs in the NFL, news changes, and that's a direct impact. However, there's nothing like golf where it's an individual sport and a line move means so much more for a player's outlook because it's just him versus the course, right? No defensive schemes, no playing time, like that's it. So the Pinnacle misprice list is if we use the Pinnacle odds to win rankings to price golfers than if we use the DraftKings salaries. So like if DJ was number 1 but number 5 on DraftKings, or vice versa. If DJ was the number 1 odds to win golfer on Pinnacle, but the 5th priced golfer on DraftKings, he would be a value in this exercise. That's a random example, but these guys here that are listed show that based on their odds to win at Pinnacle, which is one of the sharpest sports books in the world, especially when it comes to PGA DFS, these guys are true values because their odds have moved or DK just didn't consider these odds to win enough. So someone like Matthew Fitzpatrick should be priced 55% higher than he is on DraftKings. That's a major difference. That's a major mispricing difference. And if you go lock in and look into the 10K double ups, the $26,000 head to heads, the 4-mans, the big where all the heavy hitting pros are playing after lock. Almost all their players are from this mispriced list, right? Wow. Some of the top players in low risk contests, especially like the multi-sport guys, the golf specialists have their own things, and they just have the most galaxy brain plays that always come out on top. But like the multi-sport DFS players, this list is what you'll primarily see their lineups composed of, especially in low risk.
That's insane, yeah. And so just to name off some of the people here: Fitzpatrick, Siwoo Kim, Simpson, Patton, Casey, Stewart. Nice, there we go. Yeah, and so again, this is something that, as we talk about some of these low-owned golfers, that if they're sub 5%, you need to find a reason to play them. This could be one of those reasons.
Yep, exactly. That just means they're mispriced, and there's it's not a sexy reason to play someone, purely math-based. But again, PGA is a very math-based sport, so
yeah, exactly. So we have about 8 more minutes here. Again, I want to thank everyone that's been joining us so far. If you have questions, definitely go ahead and ask. Remember, Brian is a top DFS player. He's a professional DFS player, consistently 150 maxes PGA. So if you have any questions about what some of his exposures are for a certain golfer, some golfers that he's less on, high on, etc., now is definitely the time to ask. And if you like what you saw here so far, definitely go ahead and hit that like button. That really helps us out. So let's talk about, I'll direct this question to you, Brian. Let's talk about a golfer that Niramata wrote up. We can showcase what that would look like in the plug, and we can talk about him a little bit.
Yeah, I think we could talk about the cover boy, Matt Kucher, who I think Nero just has an obsession with. He's always talking about Matt Kucher, and he hasn't played the best as of late, but I think Niramata laid out some good reasons as to why to play him this week. And let me pull up my notes here really quickly.
While you're doing that, I do just want to say we do have in the daily plug is this weekly transparency section, which shows the performance of Niramata's picks from last week below, based off how they compared to their pre-tournament expected fantasy points based on their DraftKings salary. I mean, literally plus 122 fantasy points over expected on the plug write-ups. And for the entire year last year in 2020, plus 621 fantasy points over expected. So
is that good? Jesus.
So the plays that Niramata writes up are great plays.
Yeah, dude. I mean, and so when his first player he puts into the write-up is normally his favorite play. And you get a guy, a Kuch, who's under 10% owned on both sites. 40-1 to win if you're looking for a bet to win the tournament. Play Matt Kucher. So he started here 17 times, has a win, 4 other top 10s, and here's where the context comes into play, right? This is why Niramata is so valuable. A lot of the recent quotes and narratives around Kuch is that his game is improving. He's fixed whatever was bothering him in the past, and as of late, his game's been improving. I think he did pretty well in the match play event. So you have a course that fits this guy's game to the T, who's had success here in the past, whose contextual data is telling us that he's in a better position than the math would be telling us, and he's sub 10% owned. I mean, that's what you look for in PGA DFS.
Yeah, you pretty much hit that on the spot. You see that here on the screen with Nirmata's write up. Ken actually has a question. Says, how about a winner, favorite play, fade, and guy you're playing that we shouldn't?
Yeah, great question. So, favorite play is probably, pull my notes up again here. Favorite play is probably Neesmith. If you want to go for the narrative, one of the first PGA Daily plugs last year after the restart, Neesmith was written up here because he proposed to his girlfriend here on the 18th hole. And so clearly likes the course. So I'll go Neesmith for favorite play. Winner, I already said Harris English, so I'll stick with that. Fade, I think I'm going to pull up the ownership here. And, there are a couple of guys I'm considering fade. I think Hoffman at 17% ownership. I know he had a great outing right before the Masters. Either Hoffman or Corey Connors, who it pains me to say because I always play Corey Connors, but I would fade one of those two guys.
I bet Corey Connors literally every freaking tournament, and he just never comes close.
And guy that I'm playing that you shouldn't is probably like one of these 1% line move guys. I'll go Austin Cook is a guy who I legit know nothing about. I couldn't give you one characteristic about Austin Cook. 6,100 1% owned line move. That's what I got.
Yeah, I'll say that's pretty much all we know. But Timothy has a question here. He says, "What do you guys know about what's up? What's the hype behind this Bryson Nimmer guy? He's 10% on the Pinnacle mispriced list. He has some odds to move at Sugar House. I think it's minus 150,000 or whatever, minus 15,000. But he's 1% projected ownership. Doesn't rank too high in the model. Do you know anything about him, Brian?"
Yeah, so he's making his first start at RBC Heritage, right? 24-year-old dude. And the reason I think he's getting some hype, especially you see a lot of these line moves like this on a week like this, it's either the typical course profile fits their game. They've had success at similar type courses. They've had success in coastal venues, or they grew up in the area or in the southeast because that's where this course is. This guy, Nimmer, he went to Hilton Head Christian, which this tournament's in Hilton Head, and he's played this course many times. So I think that's the reason you're getting a guy who's I think he's 6K, a little bit mispriced, has some hype. He knows the course like the back of his hand, which is always helpful in a windy, tough course. So whether that translates into anything, I don't know. But I will say that type of logic and reasoning is a reason why a lot of professional bettors do make golf bets on odds to win. And I wouldn't be surprised if there's some action on Nimmer this week because of that.
That makes sense to me. So we have about 60 seconds, a couple minutes left here before we get up out of here. Brian, is there any last words you want to say, or if you have any questions, people watching, definitely go ahead. Now it's time to ask. But Brian, do you have any last lingering thoughts?
It's a tough week with it being a wide open course. Don't feel the need to use all your salary. Don't feel the need to play a stud. Don't be scared to play a guy you've never heard of. It's wide open. If they have a line move or something else, go ahead and play him. Just remember to try to stick to the strategy here that we always talk about. You're gonna be if you stick to this line of construction, you'll have a shot at least to have enough risk, but not too much risk. 2 golfers that are high owned, 2 golfers that are low owned, 2 guys right in the middle. Most is a perfect blend of risk reward.
Yeah, it's like I said, I have my fix of PGA from last week. I got to keep it going, so it's definitely going to be a fun time. So
you hit your Harmon bet, right? Top 20 last week.
Yeah, I had a top 20, I think it was top 20 or top 30. I can't remember which one it was, but yeah, it was. I wish he was didn't suck and got the victory.
I know he I call it the triple condom approach. I think he barely had any birdies, but also barely had any bogeys, which is enough to sneak you in the top 20 at the Masters, but not enough to truly threaten, unfortunately.
Exactly. Last question here from Decoy. He said, we normally don't comment on individual lineups, but Brian, if you want to, he says single entry GPP, Fitzpatrick, Woo Kim, Garcia, Kucher, Kazari, and Johnson.
Just looking at ownership here. It doesn't look like it has a sub 5% play. So I would get 1 to 2 sub 5% plays in there. Right now you have Fitzpatrick high owned, DJ's like 10%, Siwoo Kim 15%, Cooch, Garcia, Kazir, all 8 to 12%. I would look to substitute 2 of those guys out and get. I like starting with Fitzpatrick and Siwoo Kim, and then of those 4 remaining golfers, I would sub 2 of them out to get 2 sub 5% on golfers.
Cool. So awesome. So that'll do it. Again, I'm Moose. You're Brian. We're here from OccupyFantasy.com. Check out OccupyFantasy.com for more information. And again, if you want to join our Discord, I know we mentioned it a couple times here, but how to get access to it, hit that join button down below. You can pay our membership fee to get in access to our Discord. Chopping it up. Brian's always in there. Our writers and other staff is in there as well. Absolute fantastic resource. Check out OccupyFantasy.com for the plug and the model across all of our different sports. Until next time, though, Moose and Brian from Occupy. Have a good night.